It's Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life and the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This week, Jacob has seen Indy 5, so we're going to do an Indiana Jones ranking. And we'll also be talking about the Napoleon trailer that dropped. We're recording this Monday night, so earlier Monday. The new Ridley Scott film based on the incredible and controversial life of Napoleon Bonaparte and starring Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, it's quite a bit. But first I have to introduce my co-host who is back in his home, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing great. It's good to be home back in Bedford, Virginia for the summer break. I'll only be here a couple of weeks. I'll be uh, going back to Tennessee and back to Virginia coming up for different things. But it's good to be back. It's been great hanging out with family. It's uh, got to enjoy the Indiana Jones movie on the big screen. I watched it with my sister, and I've just been enjoying the quality family time.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Personal life wise, relationship wise, I won't go too deep into it if you don't want to, but how is that going?
Oh, that's been going pretty good. It's I do miss my girlfriend. I'm not gonna lie, but we've been keeping in touch, and it's still been going very well, very smoothly, and I'm excited to see again where that goes. And like I said, it's been some
Well, I
great
haven't.
blessings this year. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just going to say, if I haven't said it, I'll say it again. I'm very happy for you, and I wish you nothing but the best in that front. But you did mention Indy 5, and we will be getting to that, don't you worry. But outside of that, have you seen anything that you'd like to talk about?
All right. Yeah, I'll save my Indy 5 discussion when we do the ranking, because I do have a lot to say about that movie. Some other movies I've watched. I rewatched Mission Impossible Fallout and the build up to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I will stand by that Fallout is my favorite Mission Impossible movie. I love what Christopher McQuarrie brought to that film. He raised the bar with how to do incredible action sequences in that movie. The Halo jump at the beginning of the film, the bathroom brawl with Henry Cavill is pretty good. There's some amazing twists and turns in that movie. I think of all the Mission Impossible movies, this is the one where I feel like we get to see the most in depth of the way Ethan Hunt thinks, with the way he is always like you think he's on to something, but he's always a step ahead of what everybody else thinks that Ethan Hunt is going through. And he is such a smart, intelligent man who will stop at nothing to protect those that he loves, his teammates and people that he knows personally. We Solomon Lane, I think, is more memorable as a villain in Fallout than he was in Rogue Nation. But then you also have Henry Cavill, who's a great antagonist for Tom Cruise, and the sparring that they have is awesome, and it leads to some of my favorite action scenes in the entire movie. There's some amazing running shots of Tom Cruise in the film, and then the big helicopter thing at the very end was incredible. I remember being my jaw dropping during some of the stunt work with and the practical effects. I just thought it's an incredible action movie. It has some of the highest stakes in any Mission Impossible movie. And out of all the Mission Impossible movies, this one is my favorite of the bunch. And it was great to revisit it again.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever encountered a movie series where the first three are received mostly positively, but it's like as soon as the fourth one hits, the entire timbre of the series just hits completely different because Mission Impossible 1 through 3 are mostly okay. I actually think 3 is quite underrated. I think J.J. Abrams did a lot of good things with it, so much so that in Fallout, Michelle Monaghan, Tom Cruise's wife in Mission Impossible 3, is brought back and is kind of reestablished back into the canon as, yeah, they're technically separated, I believe, but they also still love each other and accepting of the Ethan Hunt is going to be Ethan Hunt, and nothing is going to change that. So there's a lot of very subtle tragedy in that I think Christopher McQuarrie just did a really great job on. There's a couple scenes in this movie where, the movie is really known, Fallout, just being known for helicopter stuff, which is of course incredible. The Halo jump, which I lose breath just watching that. But I feel like there are these little moments where like the movie takes its time and really just sits on it and makes you realize that Ethan Hunt, this is his life. Nothing's going to change that. That is his destiny. Like his destiny is to take on the impossible missions, and there's no room for family in that. The closest thing to his family are Benji, Ving Rhames' character, Luther Stickle, and now Rebecca Ferguson is in that group as well. I'm stoked beyond belief for Dead Reckoning. I have been hearing nothing but good things about it, so I'm crossing all my fingers and all my toes that movie is really good, because the reviews have started to come in and they have been fantastic.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see the new Mission Impossible movie. I can't wait to see what the hype is all about. And I don't know if it'll top Fallout, but I'm hoping it's going to be another top tier Mission Impossible movie, which I think there's going to be a lot of top tier Mission Impossible movies because 4 onward have all been amazing Mission Impossible movies.
Yeah, I was looking on social media just a couple hours ago. There are people who are saying seeing it for the second time. I'm like, I'm sorry, the second time? So clearly this movie is striking a chord if people I trust are saying seeing it a second time. That really says something.
Yeah, that is really impressive. But other movies that I've watched, I finally got to check out The Flash. I actually saw it on July 4th. Even though the movie's tanking at the box office, I still wanted to see the movie as somebody who's enjoyed the fragments of the DCEU and still wanted to see the movie just to form my own opinion on it, despite its very divisive reaction. Personally, I thought The Flash was a pretty good movie. I don't think it's a top tier effort in the DCEU. I think the film was ridiculously overhyped, and I think that's why people were disappointed in the film. But if you tamper your expectations and just you get an entertaining superhero movie with some epic stuff in there. The Ezra Miller controversy aside, I still thought Ezra did a good job as Barry Allen in The Flash, and we get to see 2 of them in this movie. And the 2 Barrys are enjoyable. One's more obnoxious than the other because it's supposed to be like the teenage Barry Allen. But I like that they kind of play around with the origin story with the timeline. And I think there's still a great performance in there if you can separate the art from the artist. I love Michael Keaton as Batman. It was great seeing him back. Some of my favorite moments in the movie revolve around Michael Keaton's Batman, and he has not lost his touch. Supergirl was a good addition to this film. Yeah, the CGI is very iffy. That was definitely a turnoff in some sequences of the movie. The opening action sequence with the babies is very rough to watch because the CGI took me out of it big time. And there was a couple other CGI shots where I respect the ambitions that they were going for with some of these shots. And I like a lot of some of the visual effects are not that bad, like how they use the Flash's powers. I thought that was really cool. But then other aspects, I'm like, yeah, you could have done a bit more polish up on some of these effects, and I think the movie would have been better received. I also think they could have done a little bit more with the fan service. A lot of it I liked in the movie, and I liked some of the ambitions of what they were trying to do with the multiverse stuff, but I feel like you could have done a bit more with it than what we already got. And I think, again, I think it's just fan expectations, I think, is what hurt this movie's box office because you have between that, uh, the studio overhyping it, and the controversy with Ezra Miller, I think that was what hurt the film. But if you look at the movie in its own terms, as kind of like a swan song for like the Snyderverse era DCU. I felt like the movie did its job. I enjoyed a lot about the movie, and it's not top tier. There's other DCU films I much prefer over the Flash, but as a whole, I had a good time with this one.
Oh, the Flash, the things you do to me. This is this is a tough one because I sit in the position now where I have to say that I understand what the movie was trying to do. I just don't think it did it super well. And I think it really boils down to there were like three or four writers on this thing. There was tons of controversies backstage, the Ezra Miller situation, and you have Ezra Miller not doing any press for it for very obvious reasons. You got Michael Keaton not doing it. He was on vacation for the press tour. It was the girl that they got to play Supergirl, Cara Savini, or I believe that's her name.
Sasha Callie is the actress.
Where did I get Cara the I don't know. It's late. I apologize, y'all. But yeah, she was one of the best. She was one of my favorite parts of the movie. If the DCU wasn't getting completely retconned with James Gunn getting into the chair, I would say I hope they do more with her, but that's looking very unlikely. Um, this was a frustrating movie to watch. It was a very frustrating experience. I have a spoiler-free and a filled discussion that I did with my good friend, Mr. Matt Wyatt. Those are currently on the channel, so go check those out if you want more details. Jacob, now that you've seen the movie, I have been dying to ask you, and this is a spoiler, but it's been out a couple weeks now, so I can ask you this question. George Clooney, yay or nay?
As a joke, I thought it was very brilliant. I love that they got him in for that one scene in the movie. And to me, it was kind of like a fun little redemption for George Clooney after Batman and Robin. But I don't know if I would want him as the mainstay Batman in James Gunn's DCU. I don't know if that would fully work. But as a joke, I thought it was pretty brilliant.
It was a nice little Easter egg. It's hilarious to know that George Clooney kind of rips on his performance every chance that he gets, which I mean, it is what it is there. A lot of it wasn't his fault, I think. And George Clooney is a multi-billionaire with other businesses, so I mean, it's not like he wouldn't go on to do all that much. He is George Clooney. So like Oscar winner, director, tequila salesman, among other things. So it's not like it was like the one thing that just tanked his career because would go on to do much better, much more high quality films. But it was nice. As I think about it more, it was honestly like kind of nice to see him. So so yeah, there is that. But I wanted to see your reaction to it because when it happened, I was just sitting there like, I don't know what Jacob's gonna think. I really
Uh,
don't.
I got a bigger smile on my face. I'm tired too. I got a bigger smile on my face seeing Nicolas Cage as Superman.
Oh yeah, because the bad CGI really took me out of that because that whole thing, I wouldn't have minded it as much, but just seeing like Christopher Reeve, his Frankenstein looking face on that, and just I don't know, it just didn't look good. That whole like Speed Force where like the bend and the multiverse thing, I was just sitting there like, this is like a multi-billion-dollar studio. This was the best they could do. So it was very subpar, I guess is my point.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't mind some of the effects, but like the Christopher Reeve Superman, like I admired what they did there, but it just didn't look right.
No.
Uh,
But yeah.
but then the last movie I wanted to talk about this past weekend, I saw the faith based film Jesus Revolution, which was directed by I think it was two directors, but one of the two directors was John Irwin, who was one half of the Irwin brothers, who have had a really good streak of faith based films. They've directed I Can Only Imagine, I Still Believe, and American Underdog, and they are all really good films. I highly recommend each one of them, especially I Can Only Imagine. That film is terrific. Jesus Revolution follows. It's set in the late '60s, early '70s, and it deals with a national revival that took place when some hippies were converted to Christianity, and it led to a national revival during that time. Kelsey Grammer plays a local preacher who doesn't like hippies originally. He is very distrusting of that group and what's going on at the time. He's an older gentleman, but then we see this converted hippie comes into his life, who is played by Jonathan Rumi, who also plays Jesus on The Chosen. Fun fact. And he kind of helps change his life around, and the two work together and they team up to convert a bunch of hippies into Christianity. And I think it does lead to a powerful message that even the most unlikeliest group of people still need the gospel. And I think, as flawed as this movie can be at times, like it does have some cringe dialogue at times. I think there are some emotional manipulation in the film at times. There's a couple moments where I think there's some sudden shifts in character arcs that aren't really earned, even though it's, I think, loosely based on true story. I don't know how it happened in real life, but how it was executed in the movie, I don't think fully worked, and it kind of took me out of the movie. But the core message of the film is really good. I like the lead performances, especially from Kelsey Grammer and Jonathan Rumi. I think we're both terrific in this movie. And I still really enjoyed the film for the message. I don't think it's as good as some of the Irwin brothers' other films. I think their two best films to date are I Can Only Imagine and American Underdog. But I think Jesus Revolution is still pretty decent, and I still recommend it, especially for the message.
Yeah, the Irwin brothers really do have a lock on faith-based movies. I think they should get all of them going forward. Jesus Revolution is one I've been meaning to see, but I just have not had the chance to. That and Sound of Freedom, Jacob. I don't know if you've heard any noise about this one.
I have heard a lot of noise about Sound of Freedom because recently I downloaded the Angel Studios app. Angel Studios is the studio uh, that makes The Chosen, and that's how I've been watching The Chosen, is through that app. And they've been promoting Sound of Freedom like crazy. And because of their little goodwill grassroots campaign they had, that movie actually made really good traction. And I think it was like the number one movie in the box office on July 4th when the movie premiered. And on that day, it made more money than Indiana Jones, which is hard to believe. But when your movie has good word of mouth, it actually does wonders. And I will definitely check that movie out at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I am sad to admit I have not watched all that many things lately. I've been in full prep mode on the channel for the rest of the year. Been sending out feelers to various people for my Scary Mania series in October. Jacob Martin's going to be a part of that. I've also got Matt Wyatt confirmed. I've got Jacob Collins confirmed. Going to be doing a lot of special things for that and for Christmas. So I've been mostly prepping. However, I was on Jacob Collins's channel while Jacob Martin and I were to watch Bad Lieutenant Port Call of New Orleans. This movie was a slog to get through, and I was sold on the fact that Nicolas Cage goes Nicolas Cage in this, and it's a very dull movie about Nicolas Cage doing cocaine, doing it with Eva Mendes, working on this very dull case. This is a movie that I enjoyed it because I got to be with you, Jacob Barton, with you, with Jacob Collins, and Stephanie from I'll Buy the Popcorn. It was nice to meet her. So I enjoyed the experience more than the movie itself. I know that sounds odd, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I've had the misfortune of now sitting through that movie twice now, and it's not a good movie. I don't know how it got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know, see how a lot of people got enjoyment out of this movie personally. The movie is so boring. Nicolas Cage is like the one saving grace in this movie. Like he has a couple of good moments in there, but the movie around it is just so dull and meandering, and even the way it's edited, it's so odd how they told this story, and I'm just not a fan of it personally.
Yeah, it's really sad. But want to I completely almost forgot to do a little bit of house cleaning for before we dive into the main topics. Um, over on Jacob Martin's channel, I will be going over there this coming Thursday, the 13th, for the latest discussing DreamWorks. We will be joined by Jason, the old millennial, to talk about Over the Hedge, which is a movie that I have fond memories of, but I have not seen in a good long time.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me to promote that, Ryan. That is coming on the channel. This is premiering on Wednesday. It'll be Thursday, the 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm excited to have Jason on for this discussion. I know he's a fan of the movie, and I'm excited to talk about Over the Hedge and to rewatch it again. It's been a few years since I've seen the film.
Yeah, that'll be this coming Thursday, and then this coming Friday on the channel. And I will have announced this by now, or in advance of this. On Friday the 14th, there's a bit of an anniversary coming up for a little movie called The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is celebrating 15 years this week. And so myself, Jacob Martin, and Matt Wyatt will be coming onto this channel to do a bit of a watch along, and it's going to be epic. That's going to be this coming Friday, 9 o'clock East. I hope to see you all. I hope to see you all there for that one. I'm so looking forward to it, Jacob.
Yeah, me too. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I can't believe that movie's 15 years old. That and Iron Man. It's where does the time go?
I know. I wasn't even into superheroes when that movie came out. I was a little late to the party on that movie, but still, man, time has flown by for sure.
That is definitely for sure. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you think? Not what did you think? What have you been watching lately? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. All right, well, Jacob, before we get into the Indy talk, I want to bring up a little movie called Napoleon. This is the latest from Ridley Scott. It is starring Joaquin Phoenix, and this is not a monthly preview. However, this movie is quite a big deal. It's going to be a big historical epic, and it's going to be coming into theaters Thanksgiving weekend, taking on Disney's new film Wish. So we just got this trailer. Jacob, what did you think?
Yeah, I really dug this trailer. I am a sucker for historical epics, and I know Ridley Scott does a fantastic job doing this genre, especially when he has the right script. Gladiator is in my top two Ridley Scott movies, and he's done some other movies well in this genre as well, particularly Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut. You got to watch the director's cut of that movie. And also, I didn't love The Last Duel, but there's still a lot of great ambition and effort put into that film that I really liked about it. Napoleon, I think if the script really delivers and the actors really give it their all, I know is going to happen, especially when you got Walking Phoenix playing the role of Napoleon. I think the film is going to be absolutely epic. I was already blown away by the size and scale of that film. It does look like an old fashioned Hollywood epic movie where it looks like everything was shot on location practically, and it felt like a movie. It definitely harkened back. It looked a little bit like what David Lean, some of the movies he was making back in the 1960s with Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago, these beautiful, wide, sweeping films with incredible cinematography and landscapes, which complement the story so well. And I'm excited to see that brought in a 21st century made movie in 2023. The fact that Ridley Scott is still making quality films, I think I saw a day he's like 85 years old, I think. The fact that he's still making movies that look this good just says, how talented of a director he actually is. Now his movies are very hit and miss, but the filmmaking in all of his movies have looked terrific from beginning to end. I'm excited to see Napoleon when it comes out.
100%. There is no runtime for this. I did double check. There is no runtime announced for this. But yeah, this is like you said, this looks like something David Lean would have directed, like in that Lawrence of Arabia, Alexander kind of style. Not the one that we got from 2004 with, I believe, Colin Farrell, but I mean, like there was one a very long time ago. This is a big historical epic. When I saw the Apple logo, I was like, wait, this is going to Apple TV Plus? Okay, but this definitely seems like something they would release in theaters and then exclusively in theaters. I'm like, oh, well, that answers that question. Thanksgiving is a bit of a weird place because as someone who used to work at a movie theater for 3.5 years, like I've mentioned several times, that Thanksgiving Day is really a day for families to go see that movie and or to see movies generally. So I think Wish is going to be very busy, and I don't think the kids are going to go see maybe a 3-hour epic about someone who's been dead for 100 years. But I mean, anything can happen, I guess.
Yeah, I think it might be a weird place to release the film, but then again, Ridley Scott's last film, House of Gucci, even though it's definitely not a family film, was also released in November. And that movie was actually profitable. So maybe they're trying to uh, try to strike lightning twice again. And hopefully Napoleon does better financially than The Last Duel, which tanked hard.
Yeah, The Last Duel was excellent. It was one of my favorite movies of that year, but man, talk about a difficult movie with a difficult subject matter. Like Jodie Comer's character being assaulted and then, well, basically determining who it was that did it, whether it be Matt Damon or Adam Driver. I love the movie to pieces, but its failure is not lost on me. Many, many factors piling up on top of one another. But yeah, Napoleon, it looks like a great movie. Ridley Scott's still kicking butt and taking names. Again, like you said, Jacob, it's a bit hit and miss with him. However, the hits are really hits, like Alien, Blade Runner, Martian, in my case, Last Duel. I'm sure I'm missing some very obvious ones, but Ridley Scott is an incredibly talented director, and I could not be more excited for this movie. I pass it off to all of you. What did you think of the Napoleon trailer? You gonna go see it Thanksgiving? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. All right, Jacob, main event time. It is the Indiana Jones ranking, and kind of similar to rankings that we've done in the past. I'll pass it off to Jacob to do his five, and then I'll do my five, and then four, four, three, three, and kind of tennising it since the Wimbledon is going on right now. But talk about let's throw it first to you, Jacob. Your least favorite Indiana Jones movie, and go.
First off, I need to preface that I do not hate any Indiana Jones movie. Some of these movies are weaker than others, and they have a lot of flaws. But I do enjoy all 5 Indiana Jones movies to some degree. But with that said, my least favorite Indiana Jones movie is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That one is still my least favorite in the franchise. It gets a lot of bad rep from a lot of people, and I can definitely see why. There's a lot of flaws with it. Uh, uh, they overuse CGI to death in that movie, to where even some practical stunt work in that movie is ruined because the CGI around it makes the whole scene look fake. Most notably, the sword fight with Shia LaBeouf and Kate Blanchett. That sequence is kind of unwatchable because of the CGI. And you got that. There's a lot of dumb moments in the film. You got Shia LaBeouf swinging with the monkeys, and then the film is ridiculously convoluted with the stuff with the aliens and the crystal skulls, and the aliens aren't really aliens and they're interdimensional beings, but in that like another term for aliens, it's really weird. And the Matt character is also really annoying, played by Ray Winstone. So I have a lot of issues with the film, but I don't think the film is hot garbage. I don't think it's an abomination either. I mean, Steven Spielberg's still directing this one. He still does a good job with it. There's still some enjoyable sequences in the film, especially when the film does rely on the practical stunt work. The opening in the warehouse is a lot of fun. I love the motorcycle chase. I think Harrison Ford, and he was 65 when he played Indiana Jones in this movie. He was still awesome in this film. He still showed that he still got it even at that age. And as much as people like the dog on Shia LaBeouf, I liked him as Mutt Williams. I think he and Harrison Ford had a good dynamic together. I wish they revealed that Mutt was his son early in the film to where it would be a more of an emotional story between the two. That's an issue I do have with the story as well. But Shia LaBeouf still gave a good performance. And I thought he and Harrison Ford were a good pair. I like seeing the return of Marion. Kate Blanchett was a fun villain. And even though the film doesn't really tackle the sci-fi stuff that well, I get the effort that Lucas was trying to do with the story and try to make it an homage to 1950s B movies. And I think the film, to an extent, embraces the cheesiness of that, but it doesn't really do it well. And the story does go into some weird directions that does hurt this movie a little bit, and why it's my least favorite film in the Indiana Jones franchise. But I don't think it's a hot garbage film that a lot of people make it out to be.
In the words of the top 10 show, that's going to be a slight punt. I'll respond to that when I get there. We will not have to wait too much longer. So for my number 5, I'm going with Dial of Destiny, and this is not meant to pick on the movie. As I said in my spoiler-free review and my spoiler-filled discussion with Jacob Collins, I don't hate this movie. I actually think there are some moments where I'm like, all right, I like that, or I saw what they were doing there. But man, this movie nearly takes Indiana Jones to a place that just left a very bad taste in my mouth. And again, I feel like, and I want to be as fair as possible, because I've said from the beginning that I did not like the idea of this movie. I believe in the monthly preview that we did on this very channel, Jacob, I gave this a 1 out of 5 on the excitement rating. So this is not some cheap, like, oh, the movie's bad. Like, I haven't just dawned on this now. I've been kind of, and I've not been wanting the movie to fail, certainly not. But it's just a movie that I just wasn't really psyched for, especially because Harrison Ford is 80 human years old. That certainly played a factor. I just feel like while Crystal Skull was imperfect, I felt like that was about as good an ending as you could hope for. But again, it has its fun moments. It has its fun action set pieces. I feel like Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, if they do another one, which I hope they don't, but if they do, I want to see her back. I feel like this movie just, there's a lot of problems, and it impacts my enjoyment too much to where to say some good things, it's a lot of bad things. Certainly not a bad movie per se. It's a very mediocre movie with some interesting, or at the very least, good parts in it. And I won't spoil anything because I understand there will be some people who have not seen it yet and may want to. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But to echo your point, Jacob, I don't hate any of these movies. There are definitely some ones like Dial of Destiny and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that I don't like certain parts of, but I feel like the heart was in the right place. And I think generally they're pretty well made. I certainly don't hate any of them. I guess that's my point.
Well, I'll just dive into my number 4 to piggyback what you said. My number 4 is Dial of Destiny, which I just recently watched. I definitely get where you're coming from, Ryan, why it's your least favorite, because I think, in a sense, I definitely can see why people are turned off by this movie. It's that it was, I think it was kind of an odd idea to do another Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford at 80, and you got a different director helming the film, James Mangold instead of Steven Spielberg. However, I think even though this movie could have been an epic disaster, I still had a lot of fun watching this movie. Even with his age, Harrison Ford still gave an incredible performance in this movie. Uh, I don't think the action was near as spectacular as in the other Indiana Jones movies. I think because Harrison couldn't do near as much stunt work at the age of 80. But what we got, it was still pretty impressive to see. And I enjoyed seeing a more vulnerable side to Indiana Jones as a character, where we see a character later in life where he's seen a lot of stuff and we see that reflected in his character. And I really enjoyed that. A lot of hatred was against Phoebe Waller-Bridges' character, and some of the backlash I think is ridiculous. Like I've seen people complain, "Oh, she hijacks the movie from Indiana Jones, and it's her movie through and through," and that controversy is nonsense. I feel like the people who made that complaint didn't actually see the film; and they just saw the trailer and assumed the worst. She's a stick in the mud at the beginning. She's uh, very derogatory towards Indiana Jones at the beginning, and she definitely has a lot of flaws. But the more she goes on the adventure, the more her character grows and changes for the better. And she's a good ally to Indiana Jones. And it's Indiana Jones's story. It's Indy's story through and through. I gotta stress that enough. It's his story. And I think the two actors do have good chemistry. And like you said, Ryan, I don't really want to spin off of her character, but if they do make a spin off of her character, I would still watch it because I'm intrigued about it. And her character is enjoyable for the most part, and I like her performance. I think there are some missed opportunities in this film, though. Like, I feel like some of the legacy characters that are in older films that make cameos in this movie. I wish they had larger roles. Like I wish Sala was more in on the adventure, and then they have a reveal at the end, the character who shows up, and I wish that character was in more of the adventure. But it was a welcoming addition to see these characters, but I wish the movie did more of them. I think I think they're much like what I complained about in The Flash. This movie does have some iffy CGI. The de aging on Harrison Ford at the beginning was good, but it could have been better. Like there were some moments where I noticed the de aging, and then when you hear him talk, like it's very odd hearing young Indiana or watching young Indiana Jones and hearing 80-year-old Harrison Ford speak. That kind of took me out of it. And some of the CGI wasn't that good. It definitely felt modern and glossy, and it didn't really feel like throwback classic Indiana Jones, kind of similar to my issues with Crystal Skull. But I like that this movie had a lot more practical stuff in it. There was a lot more location shoots in the film. There was a lot more practical stunt work in the film, and I think I was just more into the adventure on this movie because there was a lot more of this movie, for the most part, that was done practically compared to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The stuff with the Dial of Destiny is weird, but I don't think it took me out of it near as much as the stuff with the aliens and Crystal Skull, to where I still got into the like kind of like the over the topness of what was going on with the Dial of Destiny and what that entails. And I actually did really like the payoff of this movie. I thought it was a good swan song for Indiana Jones as a whole. Even though the movie does have flaws, much like Crystal Skull, and it's not near as good as the original three. I do think it's better than Crystal Skull, and as a whole, I thought it was a pretty satisfying end for Indiana Jones as a character. So I actually really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, this one is tricky, like I said, because I feel like Phoebe Waller-Bridge might bore some hate unnecessarily because, well, unfortunately, anything really regarding Lucasfilm is just going to that's just going to happen. It just is what it is. I feel like I feel like there were decisions made with this movie that I'm just not a fan of, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I won't spoil anything. That's all I will say. But for my number four, I'm going Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I've never, well, I shouldn't lie. I liked this movie and then I hated this movie because I was like 13 or 14, and I guess that was just what you did when you're that age. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of walked my stance back a little bit. I can definitively say that this movie is not great, but when the movie is on, it's actually on. Like it really is on. I think Shia LaBeouf, it is unfortunate what he went through from all intention, from everything I've seen, he's doing much better now, and thank God for that. I feel like there could have been a lot done with Indiana Jones's son. I won't spoil anything, but that gets completely thrown down the crapper. Um, there's dodgy CGI in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as well. There's definitely some stuff where like, yeah, that's not aged all that particularly great. But I like Kate Blanchett as Spalko. I like Karen Allen, seeing her back. Harrison Ford's great. Shia LaBeouf is pretty good. John Hurt as Harold Oxley and Ray Winstone as Mac, they both nearly killed the movie for me because we're supposed to believe that like Harold Oxley is like can be annoying, but he's like this big expert on the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And the first thing we see him is he's like doing his best Charlie Chaplin impression. And I get it. He's under the spell of the skull, so there is a reason for this. So I admire what they did, and I hate it. So I hated that part, and I thought Mac being a triple agent, it just didn't work for me. So the movie has a lot of flaws. However, I feel like there is quite a bit that I like in this. So not horrible, but not amazing either. It's flawed, but it's still good.
Yeah, I think we have 5 and 4 flip flopped. I think, but I feel like even though they're the two weakest Indiana Jones films, there's still high enjoyment factor in both of the films, as flawed as they are, and no matter where we place the films. So,
Yeah, 100%. But what about you? What's your number three? I've been interested to hear this.
my number three is Temple of Doom. It is for a lot of people, it's the black sheep in the original trilogy, but that does not make it a bad movie. In fact, I think this is a great movie, even though it doesn't. It's definitely not near as rewatchable to me as my top two in the Indiana Jones franchise. Every time I go back to Temple of Doom, I love a lot about this movie. It's the darkest Indiana Jones film for sure. There's definitely some really dark stuff in this movie with like them ripping the heart out of the guy and doing the sacrifices, and child slavery is a part of this movie. But even with all that stuff in the middle act, the movie is still a high roller coaster of adrenaline action. In fact, I dare say this is the most action packed Indiana Jones movie. The opening brawl at Club Obi-Wan. You have a great car chase at the beginning, which introduces the short round character. The plane sequence, which people say nuking the fridge is super far fetched, but they give this scene a free pass. I think both scenes are fun in their own right. Personally, I know that's an unpopular opinion. You got the mine car chase, which is absolutely amazing. You got the scene on the bridge, which has high suspense. And yeah, obviously you got Harrison Ford, who's still excellent in the role. People dog on Willie. I get it. She's annoying, but she serves her purpose though. I think Willie gets way too much hate. Kate Capshaw plays the character well. She, I think, for what she was given, I enjoyed what she brought to the role. She and Harrison Ford do have good chemistry, and her character grows and she serves a purpose by the end of the movie and even helps Indiana Jones out by the end of the film. So she's not the screamy, annoying, useless damsel in distress that people tend to stereotype the character as, even though she is at the beginning, but she's a different character by the end. That's all I'm saying. I get it if people don't like this movie, if it's too dark for them, if it's too weird for them. I definitely get that. But personally, I do highly enjoy this film, especially for the action adventure, the adrenaline of it all. Even though I don't rewatch it near as much as the other two films, I still have a great time with Temple of Doom, and probably the most underrated in the franchise, I would argue.
Yeah, I've never disliked Willie Scott, to be completely honest. I honestly don't like Mac. Like, I hate Mac a lot more than I do Willie Scott. And my reasoning for this is that Willie Scott, for all her annoyances, she is useful. She helps Indy quite a bit. So does Short Round. I've never hated both of those characters.
Oh yeah, I always forgot about Short Round. Short Round is awesome. Shout out to Ki Hui Kwan.
Yeah, Oscar winner Ke Huy Quan, lest we forget. Temple of Doom is a movie that is like Hunter S. Thompson, too weird to live and too rare to die. It's one of those movies that God bless it for doing something different, but at the same time, dang it for doing something different because, like I said, it just falls into its own weirdness way too much. And for some people, this is their favorite, and I understand why. And I can more than sympathize. I just think the movie is just it's like a little too far out there for my personal taste.
Hey.
But for number two, I have a feeling that we might be simpatico, but I might be wrong. What is your number two, Jacob?
All right, so my top two are very neck and neck, and it is hard deciding which one is my favorite of the Indiana Jones movie. But I'm gonna go with my gut here. Number two is Last Crusade. Last Crusade is my number two. It's close to being my number one, and I'll explain why the other film's my number one. I love so much about Last Crusade. I love the pairing of Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. Sean Connery steals the entire movie as Indy's father. That was brilliant casting, even though they were like 10 years apart in age. But you buy that Sean Connery is his dad, and he gave an excellent performance. And most importantly, I love the father son story. Much like I think we discussed when we recently collabed and did Last Crusade on your channel, I would argue this is the Indiana Jones movie with the most heart, mainly because the father son story. Yes, this film has incredible action sequences. The prologue with River Phoenix, the young Indy, is awesome. I love the tank scene; is amazing, and even the whole quest for the Holy Grail is done very well. I think what makes this movie the great film it is the heartfelt father son story. You already have these estranged people who did not have the best relationship, even though they loved each other, grow more to love and respect each other through this adventure. And there are some compelling stuff. Even though it's my number two, it's a very, very close number two, and it's one of the best films in the franchise for sure.
Well, I was wrong. We were not simpatico. I thought our two and one would be the same. But my number one, spoiler alert, is Last Crusade. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. My number two rather is Raiders, and really, it's hard choosing between these two because they're both just excellent for different reasons. Raiders of the Lost Ark is pretty close to perfect, and really, it really boils down to just first of all, just how much went into it because like just learning about how this character was also named Indiana was almost named Indiana Smith because George Lucas, I believe it was Spielberg who was like, I want to make a movie about an Indiana Smith, and then George Lucas was like, no, you want to make a movie about an Indiana Jones. So that's a little fun fact for you guys. Uh, from Harrison Ford getting dysentery from eating the food in Tunisia where they were shooting, to where because of the food poisoning, the scene where the dude swinging the sword and Indy pulls out his gun and does that was supposed to be longer, but because Harrison Ford was sick, he was like, "Can I please just shoot the guy?" And Spielberg, who was also sick, was like, "Just shoot the guy." And so he just shot the guy. Learning about the backstage stuff is just as fun as the movie itself, but it's like the perfect adventure movie almost. Everything is told in a language that is easily understandable. Harrison Ford is excellent. Karen Allen is excellent as Marion Ravenwood. It's one of those movies that like that and Last Crusade for me is almost 1A and 1B. I really cannot choose, but I want to give the name of the villain who plays Balak, and I'm blanking on it, but Paul Freeman, that's his name, because he's excellent in the movie as Belloc. And honestly, he's like, I think my favorite villain of the series is Walter Donovan, but Belloc is pretty close because he is Indiana Jones's equal, and they have so many great conversations in the movie, especially in the bar where the two are just discussing archaeology and saying like something along the lines of, if I take this watch and I stick it in the desert now, like if I take this watch now, it's worthless. Stick it in the desert for 1,000 years, it becomes priceless. Not sure that's how antiquities work, but the logic is still there. The truck chase, the opening of the arc scene, it's just a perfect movie. But I'll pass it off to you, Jacob, for your number one. It's obviously Raiders. So
Yeah, number one is Raiders of the Lost Ark. That is, even though it's a close race, it is my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Even though I will argue that Last Crusade has more heart to it, the reason why Raiders is my favorite is because it is the quintessential action adventure film. I think out of all the Indiana Jones films, my favorite action set pieces are in this movie. The boulder, you have the what was supposed to be a sword fight originally, but like you said, Ryan Harrison was sick, and so he just shot the guy, and that scene was even better because of it. The truck chase is absolutely amazing. The stuff in the Well of Souls, where Indy and Marion are trapped and they have to get out, is a fun scene with all the snakes. There's so much good stuff in the film. Great casting, obviously, with Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, John Rhys Davies as Sala. And I'm glad you brought up Belloc, Paul Freeman, because I honestly think he is the best villain in the Indiana Jones franchise, strictly because, like you said, he is the equal to Indiana Jones. He does a lot of the things Indy does, but is a more sinister, evil version of it. He's more corrupt. He'll do anything to get what he wants, and he'll sell to the wrong people to get what he needs to do. And I like the back and forth that those two characters have. Like they're on the same terms, but they have different value sets. And that's what makes the dynamic so interesting, especially the scene that you were talking about when you were talking about this movie when they're talking in the bar. I think is a terrific dialogue sequence. I think Raiders is such a good movie. I think all of the action adventure movies that have come out before Raiders just owe a debt of gratitude to this movie, whether you're talking about The Mummy or National Treasure or even Uncharted that came out last year with Tom Holland. I think even that movie owes a debt of gratitude to Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark because that pretty much Raiders kind of like reinvented the genre. It took a lot of classic tropes from classic adventure serials, but it did it in such a fresh way with quicker pacing, more iconic characters, and just better filmmaking that still holds up very well today. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely one of my favorite action adventure films, and one of Steven Spielberg's best films. It's definitely in my top three from the director. I love so much about this movie, and it's iconic for a reason.
I mean, yeah, it's honestly could be in the conversation for best movie of all time, period. If you all want to do something fun, I highly recommend you all check out Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel's review of it when they first saw it in 1981, because there's like a general feeling of they were kind of like they still loved the movies, but they were just disappointed in what they were getting around that time. And just when they saw Raiders, it was just like a breath of fresh air. There was a part where Siskel was like, I remember talking like to some theater goers, and they were like, "Do you like this movie just because the movies we've been getting have been pretty crappy lately, or is it just that good?" And Siskel was like, it's a little bit of both. However, and this is me talking. You can put this movie in any era, and it would just like it would thrive. Like it's just one of those movies. Like put it in the 50s, it works. 70s, it works. 90s, it works. It's timeless. But as for my number one, it's Last Crusade. It's the one I've seen the most. It's the one I always come back to. It's the one that just I it's got that Harrison Ford and Sean Connery chemistry. It's so strong. There's so many little notes to where you don't pick them up on that first watch, but on that second, third, and fourth watch, you kind of pick up on it more. The relationship that they have, or the non-relationship that they have, how Henry Jones Sr. was more focused on finding the Grail than being a father, and maybe he did it because he was guilty over losing his wife to something that he had no control over. River Phoenix, the late River Phoenix, rest in peace, doing the incredible job of playing young Indiana Jones in that train sequence. And then you understand every note of the Indy lore up to that point. It's so made crystal clear in like 20 to 30-minute sequence. Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best of all time, but The Last Crusade is just a little bit better in my opinion. Like I said, though, they're 1A and 1B.
Yeah, I wish we did 1A and 1B for those two movies because it's hard deciding which one's better. But I think I had to give it to Raiders because the action in that movie is so good. And it's the one that started it all and it introduced the character and kind of reinvigorated the genre. Kind of like what Star Wars did with sci-fi, Indiana Jones did with action adventure.
There were definitely a lot of movies that when it comes to Raiders, there was a lot of movies that like Raiders walked Raiders walked so like others could run and sometimes like fail and die trying. But I mean, yeah, this is just like I said, Last Crusader, Raiders, flip a coin, I'll back either argument. But for me, Last Crusade just by a hair. But I pass it off to all of you. Favorite Indiana Jones movie and why? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. Well, Jacob, it's been a privilege to do this with you every week. I look forward to doing the watch along on Friday. But for right now, tell us about your channel. Where can people find you?
Well, people can follow me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook, and of course, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel where I primarily do movie reviews. I'll at the time this video dropped, I've already done my newest what I've watched live stream, where I've done more in-depth reviews of movies that I've watched in the last couple of weeks. And then I'll re-edit and re-upload those videos for standalone movie reviews. Before Dead Reckoning comes out, I should have videos uploaded for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which will be a collab with Epic-tastic Joshua. And then Rashad G Reviews will join me for the collab on Mission Impossible Fallout. And I hope to have those videos, standalone videos, dropped before Dead Reckoning comes out. And like I said, also we got the Discussing DreamWorks, which will be this Thursday the 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Me, Ryan, and Jason Neal Millennial will be discussing Over the Hedge. And then, and then this Saturday I'll be doing my Reacting to Hot Takes live stream. It was supposed to be this last Saturday, but something came up and we had to delay it to this Saturday. But me and Henry Mockingbird will be joining. We'll be doing our Reacting to Hot Takes live stream for the month. We'll be reacting to the Critical Drinkers negative review of Glass Onion. So be on the lookout for that coming to the channel this Saturday. And that's some of the stuff I got coming up.
Yep, Jacob's channel will be linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. It really is worth your time. But as for this channel, I've been kind of bad on the uploads lately. I will have my Q2 cinema catch-up video up, and I will have my top 5 movies of the year so far list up. I have been slow. I do apologize for that. But I will also be reviewing Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. When I do see that, I might be able to see it early, but let's put a pin in that for right now. But like I said, watch along Friday night. I will be on Jacob's channel, talk about Over the Hedge, so do check out that. And as for that, Thank you all so much for watching. If you like the video, leave a like, subscribe, click the bell to allow notifications so when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. For Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We'll see you in the next one. You all take care.